So now I'm going to turn it over pretty much to Mr. Terpstra, because it seems like you've got pretty much the rest of the meeting, except for Ms. Wilson has some to do as well. So over to you, Mr. Terpstra, with thanks.
Yeah, sure. Thank you again. So the next few things are just is really an update and sharing some work of the AI technology working group, and always of curiosity to the education committee. And so the first thing I'm going to show you is, as people know, we do have guidelines for the district around the usage of AI, and this is just a piece on when do I use AI, and this is really to help teachers and students navigate AI, and also just to be a pointer. Really, as with anything, including cell phones and technology in our classrooms, it's the teacher who decides, how it's going to be used in their classroom. And so here we have a no AI zone. It can be used as an idea spark, a feedback assistant, and a work partner, and it sort of just defines those two spaces. When we get into the high school, actually, sorry, we've also going to teach kids how to be able to responsibly cite AI. So this poster here is just an elementary, and it sort of just talks about what is AI, and when, with permission, students are using it for their learning, and if they're required to actually give credit to the AI and its usage. These are basic ways in elementary to do that. Obviously, this is more in intermediate level, going on grade 6, 7 preparation for high school, and then we have two documents for the high schools, both MLA and APA style, and this is more detailed on how to guide students if their teacher's asking them to use proper citation for their learning, and in this case, these cases, it would be more if they're actually doing a presentation, essay potentially, or a report. And so that I just want to credit, a lot of work has gone into this, both us sharing and gaining information from a variety of other districts, but also our working group going through feedback, and coming up with these documents. So that's our next space, and our next stop in the Tech AI update for us all.
I do have a question about this,
Mhm.
and then I'll go to Trustee Austin. Back when I was on the CEAC, Curriculum Implementation Advisory Committee, which is a committee set up by our MATA friends. Oh, I see, I've got Marina first and then Trustee Austin. I think the working group developed out of that group. Has the process changed at all, Mr. Terpstra?
No, so we used to have a technology and assessment communicating student learning committees, and then we moved to SEAC 2 years ago. I mean, SEAC also existed, but we sort of made it a bigger, more representative committee, and then working groups under that. So technology AI became working group under SEAC, as is assessment and communicating student learning. So those two groups function as working groups. So gathering of teachers, we do the work, and then we either bring to SEAC for approval or feedback and recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. Marina, your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering how this will be communicated to parents and to students. You mentioned a poster, but is there something where they're going to need to sign and commit to kind of following recommendations? And I know as a parent, like, this is all new territory, AI, and how that's going to impact and how my children are going to use it. Just wondering how that's going to be communicated to parents and caregivers as well.
Yeah, good question. Right now, these are, let's say, classroom guidelines for our students. But next well, we're not meeting in March, so in April, we will be revealing a full technology plan update for the school district. And part of that plan is not only all the communication, but actually having parent communications. And honestly, Marina, what I'd love to do is put back to you as a group is if you know, parents would like an information night around AI and technology, we'd be happy to do that. Yeah, feel free to invite us. We'd
Okay.
love that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, and just process on that. The AI plan will come to Ed
Yeah,
committee
so-
and then board, or board directly to board?
So the AI Tech Committee, or sorry, Tech Plan will, it's going to SEAC at their next meeting for feedback. Then it will go to the Ed Committee for hopefully approval and recommendation to the board.
Okay,
Because
so
it is an official plan versus
Yeah.
what you just saw are just resource documents.
okay, so possibly that would come in May, right?
April.
In April Ed
It's
committee?
done, yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool. We'll put that on the agenda then. Thanks.
Yeah.
And over to you, Trustee Austin.
Thanks for that, Rudy. I'm going to put up, just sort of pulling back and looking at maybe a really big picture in terms of AI. I sat in on an online panel out of UBC Center for Climate Justice a couple of months ago. And they had a panel with Naomi Klein and Stephanie Dick and other people on the impacts of AI in terms of climate justice. They talked a lot about other social justice issues as well, use in the military, things like that. It is really worth, I think, for a lot of people that are interested in the bigger picture, having a look at it. I'm going to put the link up to the page, and then on the page, there's a link to the YouTube video of that panel. I said this, I think, maybe at our last education meeting or some meeting too, that AI has a use. There is a place for it for sure. And if anybody's like me, you know, last year or something, I was going, ooh, AI, how exciting. And I was playing around with it. I was doing images and seeing what it could do. And I was having a great fun but I wasn't really paying attention to the environmental impacts of AI. Every time I asked it to do something, the absolutely mega power and draw of water is huge. So I kind of hope that bringing it back down to our school district, that becomes part of the discussion around AI, is having people stop and go, is this necessary? Do I need to do this right now? Because it does have an impact. It has a social impact. It has an environmental impact. So that might become part of the discussion too. So thank you. That's all I had to say.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Trustee Austin. And indeed, this is true, and we'll continue to follow this through. It takes a lot of resources. And thank you for putting the information up on the chat. Perhaps we'll hear about this more in the future because we may have the environmental conference coming up too. So I hope. Anyway, anything else before we move on? Okay, moving right along, Mr. Terpstra.
All right. Okay, I will once again share a screen. I'm going to invite Superintendent Jory to jump in at any time. I'll just give a little bit of background to this presentation. There we go. So tracking equity and meaningful graduation, supporting student success through inclusive guidance and practices. Where this presentation came about, and all credit goes to Principal Katie Marin, myself, and Superintendent Jory. really responding to a lot of things, including, our Indigenous learners, our recent grad rate, or all the things that, we're working towards improving in our district, and how we can have a better communication to all the people that are involved in that success. And so I'll just go through. So just acknowledgement and purpose. Just we always want to begin by honoring the Indigenous communities and recognizing their deep connection to the traditional territory. And I think we saw a great example of that from Bowser Elementary today. Clarify the goal to strengthen shared systems, ensuring students receive consistent support toward graduation, and equity and care, highlighting and embedding of equity into processes that foster responsibility, consistency, and shared values. Why graduation matters. This is big. As we all know, impact on graduation on life outcomes. You can see these factors: economic and employment benefits, access to further education, of course, health and well-being, intergenerational influence. And I really remember last year when we did a study on with our students who were most absent in our secondary system, and we actually interviewed them all. And one of the things that we realized from that study, two things. One, moms were super important to them, but the other piece was that they were coming from homes that hadn't had success in our school system. And then positive and community impact. Defining meaningful graduation. When we went through the strategic plan, this was a really big debatable topic, because what we realized was, who gets to define what meaningful graduation is, and what if a student, for example, or a family or a person doesn't agree that actually graduating for high school makes meaningful graduation. But through that, we've come up with meaningful graduation should emphasize dignity, purpose, and options. And remember the network of innovation and inquiry always talked about options, because we want our students to graduate with the highest possible options that they can have. So when they decide what they want to be when they grow up, if they haven't got there yet, those opportunities are still available to them. The primary graduation pathway, BC Dogwood Diploma, and we'll have some slides later talking about this specifically, is preferred. Adult Dogwood is appropriate, but only as an alternative when graduation is essential. And then school completion certificates that I'm happy to say we've almost have very few, and they're only in unique situations. Intentional pathways must be intentional, informed, and revisited wherever practical. So graduation as a systemic approach, early and shared graduation process, trading up, trading down, and I'll get Superintendent Jory to talk about that on the next slide. And then intentional and reversible moments. Pathways change must be intentional, informed, and reversible to preserve dignity and future student options. We talk about a good example of that I like to say, and it comes up in another slide, is when we like to just recommend at grade 9, everybody takes the same math up to grade 9, then grade 10, you have 2 options, right? And we tend to just recommend those options based maybe on math skill, but we don't really say, hey, do you want to take this option versus that option, realizing that you're now eliminating thousands of jobs from your options, right? So I think it's about knowing what your options are and the choices and your skills and what you want to do. And proactive and equitable interventions. Superintendent Jory, I'll pass it to you to talk about this slide.
This is a concept I started working on back when I was a high school principal. And it speaks to what Director Terpstra was mentioning a few moments ago, meaning that there's just a huge impact on potential outcome that a student acquires when they get that dogwood, and it really is a launching pad for so many other opportunities. It's incredibly important to get them to that point and get them as far as you can towards that point. And once that becomes secure, once that dogwood is secure, what we'd like to see with our kids is for us to add options to their future by additional coursework, more challenging coursework that opens more and more doors. And so it's taking that concept where, if you don't take certain courses, if you remove courses, you just don't have as many choices down the road. And so once we have that graduation locked up, let's see if we can get more possibilities on the table. So essentially, this is a little bit of a workflow. We're capturing a student that might have been out of the system, might have hit some speed bumps along the way. We're reintroducing them into classes. We're assigning them courses. We're working with them to choose things that they're interested in, that we know that they need to meet their graduation requirements, and then we're building up as they're successful. And then conversely, if they're starting to hit the wall a little bit, a student is attempting to be successful but is becoming discouraged, maybe they've started skipping a class, they've started to not come, they're in danger of failing or not graduating. There's an opportunity there, or maybe several opportunities to pull them aside, have a conversation, and potentially an intervention where we say, okay, all right, this class isn't working. Let's choose something that where we think you might be successful. It might reduce some options, but it's going to protect that dogwood as much as possible. And there's a bit of a hierarchy here. I mean, I've often said this, ever since I was way back there in the early days. Some schools better than no school, more schools better than some school. And if a student is a reluctant learner, has been disengaged, the more we can get them, the farther we can get them through the system, the more credits we can get them, the better off we think they're going to be. And ultimately, we want to get not just to that basic dogwood, but an enhanced dogwood, or even beyond that. And this is a little bit of a way to kind of articulate that with people in the system. Go ahead, Rudy.
Awesome, thanks.
If I
And then
can
I just
just break in for a second. Sorry, Mr. Terpstra. The chat has been turned off for this meeting. I don't know how to turn it back on.
Okay.
But if Trustee Austin's going to put that in chat, it's going to be hard to do.
Okay.
So
I'm
if you could
gonna wait
attend to
till
that.
I stop sharing, because
Yeah.
and then remind me if I don't turn it on. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. So our next slide is just equality versus equity, and we talk about that a lot, and not so much. We don't necessarily talk about it. We hear people talk about equity and they actually mean equality. But there's this slide that people have seen, but what I like is this slide. This is a new level of sometimes our reality is like this, especially when we talk about privilege. We have equality and equity there, but then what if we take the fence down and remove the barriers, right? And that's what I like about this slide when we talk about equity for all. I added this slide just a reminder that truth and reconciliation is also education plays an important role in this, and this is coming from our assessment plan, where literacy and numeracy results are important indicators of educational success of First Nations. And you can read the rest of it, but it really supports the work that we're trying to do. And one of the things that I want to highlight is under the leadership of Principal Katie Marin, is that we've instituted grad coaches in our high schools, specifically for tracking Indigenous students. So again, as a team, we're tracking all of our students, but we have this added layer for our Indigenous students. And this is just, this is a quick, I'll go through these quickly, but you can see red, yellow, green is our tiers approach for many of aspects of our, but you can see how through coaching, very few students are left in the red, and most of the students are in the green by the end of the year. And the same experience we had at KSS, and this is this year so far as we move along through the school year. Just really paying attention, and then patterns and evidence, systemic vulnerabilities, patterns across the school reveal system flaws. Some lead to credit loss, late course identification, not individual failures. So we want to keep students on the best path as much as possible as they go through the system. Risk of disengaged students, and we know, and we've done a lot of work there, and Braden was talking about, you know, attendance even in an elementary school. Both of our high schools have been working on student engagement and increasing attendance, equity in optional systems, as well as student experience signals. So not being confused, surprised by pure communication, feelings of judgment, highlight the need for clear and predictable systems. So,
and Rudy,
yeah.
and this is the time I think to mention that as hard as we're working to recognize where our systems don't work, there's still more work to do. The issue for a student really should be around the curriculum, their learning, and our assessment of their learning, and our guidance towards them demonstrating that learning through a variety of means. And what we still find is there are things that happen, there are structures that get in the way that have nothing to do with that. And they're artificial impediments or barriers that are there through perhaps convenience or tradition, and they're still hanging kids up. And one of our jobs is to recognize those barriers and remove them and make those pathways simpler, not to diminish the learning, not to take away from the expectations around the curriculum or the assessment of that curriculum, but the non-curricular things that have actually nothing to do with our role here. And that's an overlooked part of this work, I think.
Yeah, that's a great segue to this next slide. Meeting and exceeding student success through curriculum transformation focused on literacy and numeracy. This is actually a quote right out of the curriculum from the Ministry of Education. And what we sometimes lose focus that this is what the learning is. We're understanding the big ideas. There's curricular competencies, and then there's content, right? And that doesn't mean you have to memorize the content to understand the big ideas. It means you have to have learning around those contents and the curricular competency standards. So I like to point out most secondary courses have 3 to 6 big ideas, English language arts has 2 main curricular competencies around communication. Social Studies 10, for example, has 7 curricular competencies. And I also pointed out there that not having foundations of math and pre-calc 11, 10 and 11 can be a barrier. I think sometimes we think about, what is, we focus on a lot of content and not how we can give our students the skills to be able to work and live and experience and learn in the world that we live in. And I'm just going to go, this was a slide mostly for staff, but teaching, planning and assessing learning for all students, communicating that learning with home, and seeking additional resources when needed. Counselors playing a vital role in guiding students through identifying early risk, collaboration and escalation, counselors, it's a team that's not only at the school level, but layered upon district supports, teachers, Indigenous support staff, principals, escalating concerns appropriately, and then proactive intervention. And then what we want to encourage people to do is make concrete commitments, identify practices, prioritize equitable progress, collective effort and appreciation, acknowledging professionalism, care for students and collective efforts, and then translating insight into action, encouraging all to apply insights as actionable steps to improve their schools. And that is the end of the presentation.
And I'll just jump in one last time and say that, we were having a conversation in policy committee about our FESL policy, and it's quite comprehensive, and it recognizes the work of the FESL, and it's essentially the provincial version of how we capture and encourage student success through strategic planning and appropriate structures. But then there's the layer of it where we get good at it, right? Where we actually are doing things that impact student learning and success positively. It's not just that it's that we have these other little pieces that we think are effective. And, part of this was inspired by that. Part of it was inspired by the budget conversation, which is, always on our minds. And the AP that we're writing right now is really about that part of it. And a number of the things that we were talking about in this presentation, especially because it's about graduation specifically, are in that AP and as well as the literacy and the numeracy pieces. This is how we get good at this. This is how we make sure that our students are doing the best that they can or as successful as we can support them to be.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jory and Mr. Terpstra. Trustee Austin, your hand is up, but I am going to assume that you don't want to speak at this time because you said you can't get your hand down, so yell at me if I'm wrong. One of the pieces of this that I think is interesting is that the ministry also has a definition of something called an educated citizen. And it's defined as an individual equipped with critical thinking, intellectual curiosity, and core competencies in literacy, numeracy, and social responsibility necessary for active, ethical participation in a democratic society. And for me, that is what I want to see all of our students graduate with. That's very poor English, Elaine, but there you go. So I want them all to be educated citizens, especially to be critically thinking. And the other part that I wanted to say is, yes, as a counselor, having a background in career counseling, this stuff is so important. And I truly thank Mr. Terpstra, Dr. Jory for putting this PowerPoint together. I think it probably should go up on the website at some point. Please, partners, put it out to your groups. I think this is really important. And also the connections to the policies that we're working on. So enough out of me and over to Marina.
Thank you. Yeah, just two quick questions. With the dogwood levels that you mentioned, are those like Qualicum school district specific levels, or is that that's province wide? Okay. And my second question is,
may I just respond to that? Yeah. I'm speaking on behalf of all of BC when I talk like this. So take it for what it's worth. In order for a student to graduate, there are a number of courses that are mandatory. And if you look at a DVR form, for example, they'll mark them as X's, and sometimes that's what we call them. Courses that have an X, meaning they're mandatory. But the minimum amount of credits is 80. So that's 20 courses at the secondary level. And so that terminology that I used, an enhanced dogwood or a university ready dogwood, that implies that kids are taking elective courses that give them more opportunities to go to post-secondary and beyond. I would say that's one way to put it. This is the way that it works in BC, but other people say it in different ways. So I can't brand the terminology.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
little bit green on that part. My other question is, I mean, it's great to see these grad coaches, but I was just curious, how are you measuring success there? Like, what are the numbers in terms of graduations and the different dogwoods, and like, how are we seeing that? Is that increasing? Is it? Yeah, so I didn't really see that in the presentation.
I'll answer. Is that all right?
Yep.
Yeah. I could actually share this, but what I'm going to recommend you do if you want to do a bit of a deeper dive is go to the Student Success website. And so if you go to Google and just type in Student Success BC, that's the public facing website that shares all the provinces data in graduation rates, FSAs, grad assessments, transition rates, and post-secondary transition, along with the student success data, which is, or the student learning data used to be called satisfaction survey. And so you can look at the entire province, you can look at any different district specifically, and periodically, I would say 2 to 3 times a year, I'll post information regarding our school district when we get new information from the province when they release the next, batch of whatever category. And so, and I do that at the board meeting periodically, and I certainly do that when it's time to do the FESL report, which is really the focus on this. So if you want to look at our data specifically, you can go to our FESL report, which is on our website. That shows everything up until September. And just in good news, I mean, we've made some significant gains in our graduation rates over the last 5 years. Our all student data, all resident student data, we're now at 94% for 6 years. Our Indigenous grad rate for 6 years is up to 93, which is about 15 points. I think the provincial average is 77, so we're well above that. And our students with special needs is up to 84 again, and that's also several points above the provincial average. And this is in an environment where, as you know, our socioeconomic status is fairly suppressed. There's no industry here. We're $20,000 under the provincial average for household income. That's a huge correlative factor. So we're feeling good about the work that we're doing to support our kids and get them ready for graduation.
Okay. So
And
it is
for more
increasing.
more information,
Oh yeah.
Mr. Terpstra has put the link in the chat, and Dr. Jory can talk about this forever.
Ever.
So, I'm gonna turn it over to Marina. Do you have a subsequent question?
No, that's just really helpful. Yeah. I just felt like that kind of closure and kind of results was kind of missing in the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, it's all there. It might be a little hard to look at, but certainly Dr. Jory's happy to talk about this at any point. I'll just put it forward. I see that Ms. Taylor has joined us, Autumn Taylor, and I am hunching that she is here to talk with Associate Superintendent Wilson about brain and belonging. I think that could be it. And without further ado, I will send it over unless Mr. Terpstra has another comment. Okay, over to you two.
Hello, everyone. Just a little bit of history and some context here in terms of what brain and belonging means. About 6 years ago, there was a group of 7 that were supported through the local action team to be certified under the neurosequential model of education under Bruce Perry's work. And we did a lot of work in our community, in our district, understanding trauma-informed practice and the brain science, and then COVID hit. And it was very traumatic for everybody. And so we had to take a bit of a hiatus in terms of the work we were doing. We reconvened last year as a small group. We've lost probably about 4 members of the original group, and we've gained some members who are passionate about brain science and understanding the emotional regulations that go alongside understanding the brain. As we were chatting, we started to think about, well, where does this brain science work belong? And when we looked at our strategic priorities, to belong is part of the board's strategic priority. So we called ourselves Brain and Belonging. And it's work that we've started to work on and towards again with a working group around what are we doing in our community to address an understanding around the brain science. We had an opportunity to partner with BC Children's Hospital. They were looking at a number of districts that wanted to have them as coaches to help districts narrow down their scope of their work, but align it with strategic priorities, but also make it manageable work. Often what we do is we get an idea in our head and then it can balloon and go all kinds of places. And we wanted to make sure that we had reasonable goals that was based on our own data and also goals that we could measure the successes for. And so this year is our first year of 3 years in a partnership with BC Children's Hospital where they've analyzed our own data and they've said these are your areas of concern that are coming out of the data that you've provided us so far. What are you going to do about it? We meet with that group on a monthly basis and we have our own coach, Gail, who talks us through our planning and what we're doing and also looking at our measurements around success. We got ahead of the game a little bit and we already started to work with them and we did forewarn them to say that we don't want to just sit here and plan for the year. We'd like to do some actions this year and we have some ideas around some of the actions that we want to do. And so already we've had a couple of sessions. We've had a session for our counselors and learning support teachers where we brought Jan Ferenz in to have some conversation with us around what does it mean around the big emotions and brain. We've done a session with our principals and vice principals because we believe that if we don't have our leaders having an understanding of what we're doing, it makes it difficult for them to lead and support the learning. And then Autumn, our very own expert, has ran one session for an ambassador for each school. We're saying we're having an ambassador or somebody that can take the work back to their staff meetings and share the learning so we can spread it around. Had one session and there's a follow-up session coming on the 27th of February to dig a little bit deeper. So I want to share my slide and share with you a couple of things that show some of the work that we're doing. And then I know Autumn will lead us, perhaps show some of the slides that she's got, and I've got it queued for you, don't worry, some of the learning that we're doing at the ambassador session. So the first one is the work that we're doing with BC Children's Hospital, and we have corrected them before Superintendent Jory says we're Qualicum School District, not SD69. We have corrected them and asked them in the rest of the literature that they're using with us to call us Qualicum School District and not SD69. So what they did is they took all of the information that we gave them and looked at what are the drivers behind what's the research saying from our data around where we need to be focused. And so this is the data summaries that they looked at, and they came back to us and said, what are you noticing about the data? What are you looking at? From that work, we had to go over, and I'm going to share it in my other screen now. We had to do what's called a self-reflection tool, where we took a look at mental health and well-being in school communities is really pivotal. It's pivotal to all the work that you heard us talk about graduation. If we've not got a sense of belonging and we've not got children feeling safe in their schools, learning can't take place. And so it is a priority. It's also part of the core competencies that we should be teaching students around mental health and well-being. It's feedback from our students that they've shared with us that they want to know more about mental health and well-being. They want to know more about how to deal with stress and anxiety and worry. They want to know more about health in general in terms of healthy nutrition and sexual health education. So we work through our self-reflection document. And it came up in it's these areas that we had to make a comment on in terms of where we were thinking our reflection was, what some of our strengths were, and what some of our opportunities are in terms of other people say that's area of growth. They use the word area of opportunity. So where can we grow in those particular areas? And then from here, so there's quite a few categories, and that's why I mentioned that it can be overwhelming and we can look at many particular areas. They're narrowing it down based on our own data, what we need to focus on the first year, second year, and then third year into this work. So you can see first principles of learning is prevalent. How do we integrate that? Social emotional learning, mental health and literacy, physical health, and then the core competences. There's also a section around community and family partnerships. And so it's great having Deepak here. We know that we're in a community where we have really healthy community relationships. And one of the things that we work on, and it fits with the graduation conversation, we meet with our community on a monthly basis and talk about our most highly vulnerable learners in our community and which agency is doing that wraparound support for them, because it's not just the school system that supports that graduation, it's also the wraparound care. So this is the sessions that we have started. This is a level 1 session, and do want to show a couple of highlight slides if you want to direct me to any, Autumn, and share what it is that you're focusing your work on with the ambassadors. You're on mute still.
Right, non-mute. Hi, everyone. If you go down, if you scroll down, you've got the Bruce Perry brain, the upside down, or the brain, it's yellow. There it is right there. Perfect. Look at that. Knows exactly where it is. In these sessions, we're not just talking about behavior. We're talking about stress response systems. We're talking about belonging, about creating safety for students, about sometimes how just eating something can soften the stress response, give them a little bit of energy, and be able to get to work. So it's not only about belonging in school, it's also about behavior patterns. It's also about how we approach behavior patterns, and it's about what's actually happening in the brain, so that we're looking at maybe students can't do what you want them to do, not that they won't do what you want them to do. And our job is to figure that out. What's the barrier and how do we support that barrier? And so this gives you an example of one of the things we're discussing is, depending on where the student is in their ability. This is a model that Bruce Perry uses to simplify the inside out, bottom up approach to the brain. We know that we're not really completely developed until we're in our 30s. And so that doesn't give me any more excuses for my behavior, but I'm completely developed now. But it certainly gives us an idea of where they're working in their brain, if they're having relational difficulties, if they have low affect, or they're very, very, they seem depressed, if they can't regulate their body movements, if they're sweating in class all the time, if they're struggling with sleep, if they're just falling asleep and yawning all the time. It shows you where they're working in the brain. And for us to actually learn, we have to be up in the cortex. And so until I can get them into their cortex, there's not a lot of learning happening in the classroom. And then if you go down a little bit more, I have one over here, the relate, reason, keep going. There it is. That's another one that we're really trying to push for teachers and staff to understand, that in order for me to change patterns of behavior over and over and over again, I have to develop a sense of safety with students. And to do that, first, they have to be regulated. I cannot help create more effective behavior and learning until they're regulated, until I have a relationship with them, and then I can reason with them. And so we're having lots of great discussions. We had over 30 people our last one, from counselors to learning support to teachers. And hopefully we will also do this again with EAs and bus drivers as we did before, just to understand that we have to have them regulated before we can do any meaningful work, whether that's learning, whether that's behavior, whether that's how you get along with your peers, all of those pieces. It has to be through regulation first.
That was one of the big questions that came up when we were working with our principals and vice principals alongside our teachers. Sometimes children are asked to just not be in the classroom for the moment till they can be regulated, and they go and visit with the principal or vice principal. And there was some pushback because there's Lego, or there's coloring, or there's something in the principal's or vice principal's office where children are playing with. That's a way to help get a child to be regulated so that you can do that conversation. And it's not just going to the principal's office and all they get to do is play. And so that education piece alone, that yes, we'll have the conversation about the behavior that might have caused them not to be in the classroom at that moment, but you can't do it right away when they're not in that regulated state. And so good learning for all and understanding why and what we're doing. And people appreciate that. Anything else on your slides, Autumn?
There's tons. We could.
Yeah, there's lots.
I could talk for hours, but I won't.
I know you can. So that's what we're doing, and we can certainly come back and share more, but that's what we're doing this year. And one of the things that we are doing next is once we've got our plan for the 3 years with BC Children's Hospital, we'd like that to go out to principals and vice principals and go out to staff to see whether they agree with it. And that works alongside our action plan in terms of what our doing is for the next 3 years. Thanks.
Great update. And for those of you who don't know Ms. Taylor, she's over at Winchelsea Learning Center, and she is the principal of all of those programs at Winchelsea Learning Center. And I certainly appreciate the fact that certainly with kids that have experienced some difficulties in the educational system, yes, they need to feel that they are heard and that they belong, and that then they can regulate. And so thank you for building those relationships, Ms. Taylor. And thank you, Ms. Wilson, for your presentation. I've been waiting on this one for a while, as you well know. It's fascinating to look at some of Bruce Perry's work. So more. Anyway, any other comments, questions, things to think about? All right, we're actually going to maybe end on time, maybe. Mr. Terpstra, we didn't really get educational updates. Anything very quickly that you or Associate Superintendent Wilson want to update?
I think I'm good for this point. We've shared a lot today, and
We have.
but and of course we have a board meeting coming up too.
Yes, so we can do it there. We have 2 more meetings of the Ed Committee this year, and we have a lot of topics that I have written down here. So, yeah, maybe we have 3 more. Maybe we have one in June. We'll see. So yes, the Indigenous Education Committee, we've been not able to have them back with us. There's some other committees. Possibly there will be an environmental conference led by students at KSS and Bolinas. We've got Tech Plan. We may have more from the Brain and Belonging Group or the State of the Child and Youth Report. So lots of topics, lots of different things. Please, I will put a report together, but mostly I'm going to rely on those PowerPoints. So please send your PowerPoints to Mr. Terpstra, because he's got the technological knowledge, certainly not me. Anything else before we take off? Okay, so tomorrow is all about budget. Okay, so it's our first round with budget, and there is a public meeting at some point, 6 o'clock tomorrow night. So please, put the word out to all your partners. We want to see them there, and we want to have their input at this point. And then April the 14th at 2 o'clock, we will be video conferencing again for Ed Committee, and we'll see how many of those topics we can cover. I so appreciate y'all being here. It's been quite a busy day, and Marina, I'll see you tonight at the PAC meeting. Just thank you. Aichika, thank you so much for these great presentations. Wow. And have a good afternoon. Bye now.